Do you ever see someone lose it in public? I'm talking about that person in a meeting who slams their pen down, their voice starts shaking, and suddenly everyone in the room shifts back in their seats. Here's the truth. No one tells you in that moment, it doesn't matter how smart they are, how much experience they have, or how good their intentions were. They just lost the room. And the scary part? It happens in seconds. Because respect doesn't walk out of the room, it evaporates. Now here's where it gets interesting. Those same seconds, the ones that destroy credibility, can be the same seconds that make it. I've watched people stand in the middle of absolute chaos, being challenged, insulted, even lied to, and they didn't raise their voice once. They didn't let their face twitch. They own the moment. And everybody in the room felt it. You know what that is? That's control. See, here's the part that most people don't want to admit. The world isn't going to test you when you're calm and comfortable. It's going to test you when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you've had enough. And that's when the truth comes out. Not the truth about the situation, the truth about you. So let's talk about why controlling your emotions isn't just good advice. It's the difference between being listened to and being dismissed, between being seen as a leader and being treated like a liability. And by the time we're done here, you'll know exactly why people can smell emotional weakness and how you can make sure they never smell it on you. People confuse being loud with being powerful. They think if they raise their voice, if they talk over people, if they throw enough force into their words, that it will automatically command respect. But here's the truth. Volume isn't authority. Composure is. And people can tell the difference instantly. Let me give you something to think about. Picture two leaders in the middle of a crisis. The first one is pacing, barking orders, interrupting every answer with a louder command. The second one is standing still, speaking slowly, listening, and then giving precise instructions. Which one are you following? Which one do you trust? The calm one. Every single time. Why? Because composure communicates something volume never can. Control. And when people sense control, they feel safe. And when people feel safe, they respect you. When you lose composure, it's like flipping a switch in the minds of everyone around you. They stop hearing your words and start questioning your judgment. And that's the thing. They might still nod at you in the moment. They might still comply because you're in a position of authority. But deep down, you've lost ground. And once respect slips, it's very hard to get it back. In my experience, the people who talk the loudest are often the ones trying the hardest to convince themselves they're in control. Think about that. If you truly know what you're doing, you don't have to prove it with noise. You prove it with decisions. You prove it with timing. You prove it by staying steady when the world isn't. That's what people remember. Not the guy who shouted his way through a problem, but the one who kept his voice level and his mind clear. Now, some people hear this and say, well, I'm just passionate. Passion is great. But passion without composure is chaos. Passion without control can turn into arrogance, or even worse, desperation. Because when you let your emotions hijack your delivery, the message gets lost. You might be 100% right, but the way you say it makes people 100% unwilling to listen. There's a reason in high-stakes environments, whether it's in negotiations, law enforcement, boardrooms, or politics, the most respected people are the ones who can keep their composure under pressure. It's not because they're emotionless. It's because they know emotions are contagious. If they lose it, everyone else will. If they stay steady, they set the tone for the entire room. That's real influence. I've seen this play out in negotiations where millions of dollars were on the line. The other side tried every trick in the book, raising their voices, cutting in mid-sentence, even throwing personal jabs, all to provoke a reaction. Why? Because if they could make the other person emotional, they can make them sloppy. But the person who won, they didn't bite. They didn't speed up. They didn't match the energy. They slowed it down. They made the other side feel the weight of every second. And in the end, they got what they wanted, not because they outshouted the other side, but because they outlasted them. Respect works the same way in everyday life. You don't have to be in a boardroom or a battlefield to see this. It could be at home, in your workplace, even in a disagreement with a friend. The one who can hold their ground without raising their voice is the one who controls the conversation. And the crazy thing, most people will misread that calmness as a sign of weakness at first. They'll test you, push harder, try to get a reaction, But when they realize they can't shake you, they start to respect you. They might not admit it to your face, but they'll know it. Now, I'm not saying you have to be cold or robotic. That's not composure. That's detachment. Composure is the balance between feeling the emotion and not letting the emotion drive the car. You can be intense. You can be firm, but it's a controlled intensity. Think of it like a trained fighter. They're dangerous, not because they're flailing their arms wildly, but because every movement is deliberate, measured, precise. You want to earn respect? You need to train yourself the same way. When you feel your heart rate spike, when you feel that urge to talk faster, talk louder, stop, breathe, look at the person, lower your voice just slightly. That alone will make people lean in. And here's the psychological twist. When you lower your voice in a tense situation, people instinctively quiet down to hear you. You've just shifted control without raising your volume 1 decibel. Think about the most respected figures in history. They weren't screaming into microphones. They were deliberate, even when speaking to thousands, because they understood something most people miss. If you can't control yourself, people won't believe you can control anything else. So start watching yourself in those everyday moments, the little irritations, the delays, the moments when someone cuts you off in traffic or interrupts you mid-sentence. Those are your training grounds. If you can master composure there, you'll have it when it counts. Because in the heat of a real test, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall to your level of training. Respect is earned in those moments when you could lose it, but you don't. When you could raise your voice, but you choose to sharpen your words instead. When you let your presence speak louder than your pitch. That's when people stop seeing you as just another voice in the crowd and start seeing you as someone worth listening to. Every emotion you feel is a form of energy. Anger, frustration, fear, excitement. They all hit your body like an electrical current. But here's the catch. Energy on its own doesn't know what to do. It needs direction. Left unchecked, it can blow up in your face. But when you control it, you can use it to move mountains. Think about fire. In a controlled environment, fire gives you warmth, cooks your food, powers engines. Uncontrolled, it burns down the entire building. Your emotions are the same. They're not the enemy. The enemy is letting them run wild with no structure, no channel, no discipline. The problem isn't that you feel too much. The problem is that you never learn to aim it. I've seen people make career-ending mistakes because they detonated their emotions instead of directing them. One heated email they shouldn't have sent, one outburst in a meeting that overshadowed years of good work, one emotional decision that ignored logic and facts. And here's the cool part. In most cases, they weren't wrong in what they felt. They were wrong in how they expressed it. That's what destroyed them. But the opposite is also true. I've seen people take that same fire and turn it into fuel. They used anger to push them into higher preparation. They used frustration to push through harder training. They used fear as a signal, not to stop, but to get sharper, to get ready. The emotion didn't vanish, it got transformed. When you understand that emotions are energy, you stop trying to suppress them. Suppression is dangerous because it builds pressure. You can't shove a volcano down forever. Eventually, it erupts. And when it does, you won't be able to control where the lava flows. That's why the goal isn't to ignore your emotions, it's to learn how to hold them, shape them, and release them in a way that serves you. Here's a practical example. Imagine someone insults you in front of others. Your instinct might be to snap back, to match their volume, to win the battle in the moment. But if you step back for 2 seconds, you realize the real goal isn't to win the argument, it's to win the room. You want to walk away with your credibility intact, and theirs diminished. That's when you can take that spike of anger and turn it into strategy. Lower your tone. Ask them to repeat themselves. Let the silence work for you. All that energy you felt, you just aimed it like a laser instead of exploding like a grenade. One of the most powerful things you can do when you feel emotion rise is to name it. Not out loud, but in your head. This is anger. This is fear. The second you name it, you create distance between you and the emotion. You go from being inside the wave to standing on the shore, watching it roll in. And from there, you can decide, do I ride it or do I let it crash and fade? Here's another thing people don't realize. Emotions are contagious. If you detonate yours in a room, it doesn't just affect you, it infects everyone. You've seen it happen. One person loses it, and suddenly everyone's tense, reactive, defensive. But if you direct your energy with control, you can shift the entire mood. Someone comes at you hot, you stay cool. Now they're the one who looks unhinged. You've just won without throwing a punch. There's also a long-term effect here. The more you practice directing your emotions, the more people start to trust you in high-pressure situations. They start to bring you in when things get tough because they know you won't make it worse. You become the person people want in the room when everything is going wrong. And let me tell you, that's how influence is built. Not by being the loudest voice, but by being the most reliable presence. But let's be real, directing emotion takes discipline. It's not something you just decide one morning and nail perfectly. You train it, you catch yourself mid-reaction and pull back. You replay situations later and think, next time I'll handle it this way. You practice in the small moments so you're ready for the big ones. One of the best drills is what I call the pause. When something triggers you, instead of reacting in 1 second, give yourself 5. Count them in your head if you have to. In those 5 seconds, your brain shifts from the reactive part, the limbic system, to the logical part, the prefrontal cortex. You're literally giving your mind a chance to take the wheel back from your emotions. Those 5 seconds can be the difference between detonating and directing. And here's the truth. The people who master this aren't the ones who never feel anything. They're the ones who feel deeply but refuse to let those feelings control the outcome. They see emotion as data, as information. Anger says, something here matters to me. Fear says, I need to prepare. Excitement says, this is an opportunity. They translate emotion into action steps instead of letting it hijack their judgment. At the end of the day, emotion is a resource. You can waste it in a flash of heat, or you can store it, focus it, and release it when it counts most. That's the difference between people who burn out and people who build. And the ones who build, they're the ones who know that every feeling they have can either control them or be controlled by them. And once you understand that, you stop being scared of your emotions. You start using them. Your reputation isn't built in your victories. It's built in your reactions. People might admire your skills, your accomplishments, your knowledge, but what they remember most is how you handled yourself when the pressure hit, when the plan fell apart, when you were pushed into a corner. It's not fair, but it's true. One bad reaction can erase years of credibility. You can do 100 things right, but if you blow up once, lose your cool once, or break under pressure once in front of the wrong people, that's what sticks in their minds. Because in their eyes, that moment reveals who you really are. Think about it. When someone overreacts in a meeting, when they slam a hand on the table or fire back an insult, that's what you remember about them. Not the smart points they made before, not the good work they've done in the past. That reaction becomes their label. Hot-headed, unstable, can't handle stress. You might never say it to their face, but you log it away, and that's exactly what others do to you. This is why your reactions are your personal brand. They're like snapshots that people carry in their memory. Every time you respond to something, you're adding another snapshot to that mental album. And here's the part that stings. People rarely remember the context of your reaction. They just remember how you reacted. If you snapped because you were exhausted, frustrated, or provoked, they won't recall those details months later. They'll just recall you snapping. Now let's flip it. Think about the people you respect most. I guarantee part of that respect comes from how they carry themselves under pressure. They don't take the bait when provoked. They don't panic when things go sideways. They respond with clarity. Even if inside they're feeling the same stress as everyone else, they've trained themselves to hold the line when it matters. And because of that, their words carry more weight. I remember watching a senior leader handle a massive public mistake. The entire team was bracing for a storm. The media was circling. Clients were furious. And inside the company, tension was boiling over. When he stepped into the room, people expected him to be defensive, to lash out, to shift blame. Instead, he sat down, looked at everyone, and said in a calm, steady voice, "We own this. Here's how we're going to fix it." Just like that, the energy in the room changed. The panic drained. People straightened in their seats. Why? Because his reaction told everyone, we're going to be okay. We have a plan. That's the kind of moment that cements a reputation as a leader. Your reaction is a signal, and everyone is watching for it. In tense moments, people are looking for a cue on how to feel. If you react with calm, you give them permission to be calm. If you react with panic, you infect them with panic. If you react with hostility, you escalate to hostility. Every response you give is either stabilizing the situation or making it worse. The challenge is that reactions are instinctive. They happen fast. That's why you have to build awareness before you're in the heat of the moment. You can't expect to magically respond well when you've never trained yourself. This is why small moments matter so much. They're practice for the big ones. Every time you choose not to roll your eyes in a meeting, every time you choose to respond to a rude comment with curiosity instead of anger, you're training your default setting. Some people hear this and think, but what if I never react? Won't people think I'm weak or indifferent? No. People don't equate composure with weakness. They equate emotional instability with weakness. You can respond firmly without losing control. You can be direct. You can be assertive. You can be crystal clear about your stance, all without raising your voice or letting emotion flood your delivery. And when you do that consistently, people start to trust you more because they know they'll get the same person every time. Reputation is really about predictability. If people know you'll keep your cool under stress, they trust you with bigger responsibilities. If they know you might explode, they'll keep you away from the moments that matter most. They'll nod politely when you speak, but they won't put you in the room when the stakes are highest. And if you're not in the room when decisions are made, your influence shrinks. I've seen incredibly talented people get sidelined because they couldn't master their reactions. They were brilliant at their job, but unpredictable in their behavior. No one wanted to risk giving them a high-stakes role because no one knew if they'd keep it together when things got tough. That's the invisible cost of not controlling your reactions. You don't just lose respect, you lose opportunities you never even knew you were being considered for. On the flip side, I've seen people get pulled into critical roles, not because they were the smartest in the room, but because they had a reputation for steadiness. People knew they could trust them to represent the team well, to negotiate without flinching, to face down pressure without cracking. And that reputation didn't come from one big heroic moment. It came from 1,000 small reactions that built a pattern. So here's the reality. Every time you respond to something, you're casting a vote for the kind of person people believe you are. You can react emotionally and let that moment define you, or you can respond with intention and let that define you instead. Over time, those moments stack up. They become the story people tell about you when you're not in the room. The question you have to ask yourself is this. When someone describes you to others, do you want them to say they're great when they're in a good mood, or do you want them to say they're solid, always steady? You can count on them no matter what, because you're writing that description every single day, not with your achievements, but with your reactions. Pressure has a way of stripping you down to the truth. It doesn't care about your resume, your title, your past achievements. It will expose your preparation or your lack of it. And here's the thing most people don't realize. When you can hold yourself together under that pressure, you don't just earn other people's respect. You earn your own. That's where real confidence comes from. Confidence isn't built from pep talks or motivational quotes. It's built from proof. Proof you've given yourself that you can walk into chaos and not lose yourself. Proof that when things get ugly, you don't fall apart, you get sharper. That proof stacks up every time you face pressure and choose control over panic. Judah, think about athletes in championship games. The crowd is roaring. The clock is running down. Every play could decide the outcome. Some players crumble under that spotlight. Others lock in even tighter. The difference isn't talent. At that level, everyone's talented. The difference is who has trained their mind to see pressure as a cue to focus instead of a cue to collapse. In life, your championship games might not be on a field. They might be in a boardroom, in a crisis negotiation, in a difficult conversation with someone who holds power over your future. And in those moments, the way you carry yourself decides more than the words you speak. If your voice shakes, if your breathing changes, if your tone rises, people read it instantly. They may not say anything, but they've already made a judgment. This person can or cannot handle pressure. Here's the beauty of control. Under pressure, it's visible. You can't fake it for long. But when it's real, people can feel it. It's in your body language, your timing, your tone. You walk into the room slower. You don't rush to fill silence. You choose your words carefully. That kind of presence tells everyone, I'm not here to survive this. I'm here to own it. And here's something powerful. The more you keep control under pressure, the less pressure scares you in the future. Because now you have evidence. You've seen yourself keep it together when the stakes were high. So the next time it happens, you're not wondering, can I handle this? You already know. That's where unshakable confidence is born, not in theory, but in lived experience. I remember talking to someone who worked in a high-stakes emergency operations center. He said the first time he was in the middle of a major crisis, his chest was tight, his mind was racing, and he barely felt like he could think straight. But he forced himself to slow his breathing, focus on one decision at a time, and block out the noise. By the end of that day, he realized something: he could do it. That changed everything for him. From then on, he didn't walk into those situations thinking, I hope I can handle it. He walked in thinking, I've done it before. I can do it again. That shift is everything. Pressure is also the great equalizer. In calm situations, anyone can look competent, but under strain, the cracks show. That's why the people who thrive in pressure aren't just respected. They're sought after. They get called into the biggest opportunities because they're the ones others want by their side when the room gets hot. Now, here's the tricky part. Most people wait for big moments to rise to the occasion, but the truth is, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. If you've never practiced keeping control in small moments, the delayed flight, the rude comment, the technical glitch during a presentation, you won't magically summon it when everything is on the line. Confidence under pressure is built in the daily grind. That means you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations on purpose. Volunteer for the project that intimidates you. Speak up in the meeting when you'd rather stay quiet. Have the hard conversation you've been avoiding. Every time you step into discomfort and keep your composure, you're building that internal file of proof that says, I can handle this. And don't misunderstand, control doesn't mean feeling nothing. You might still feel your pulse race or your stomach tighten. Control means you acknowledge it and keep moving. It means you don't let your body's panic signals dictate your behavior. You act from decision, not from reaction. When you get to that point, something incredible happens. You start walking into situations with a different posture. You don't rush, you don't over-explain, you don't need the room to validate you because you've already validated yourself. That quiet confidence speaks louder than any attempt to prove you're capable. And the best part, once you've built that internal confidence, it doesn't just affect how you handle pressure, it changes how you approach life. You take more calculated risks, you go after bigger opportunities, you're willing to face rejection or failure because you know you won't crumble if it happens. That's freedom, that's power. Pressure isn't going away. If you want a life of comfort, avoid it. Well, you'll also avoid growth, respect, and real achievement. If you want to lead, if you want influence, if you want to build something worth remembering, you have to walk straight into it and hold your ground. Not once, not twice, consistently. Because every time you do, you're not just surviving a moment, you're carving another layer into your character. You're sending a message to yourself and to everyone watching. I'm not just capable when it's easy. I'm capable when it's hard. And that's the kind of confidence no one can take from you. Emotional control isn't something you turn on only when life throws you into a crisis. By the time you're in a high-stakes situation, it's already too late to start practicing. You don't rise to that moment. You default to whatever habits you've built beforehand. That's why mastering emotional control isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily discipline. People make the mistake of thinking they'll just be calm when it matters most. They think they can just flip the switch. But control isn't a switch. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, if you don't work it out regularly, it's weak when you need it. That's why the real training ground for emotional control isn't the big moments. It's the small ones you face every day. Every time you're stuck in traffic, Every time someone cuts you off in conversation, every time a plan gets delayed or someone misses a deadline, those are your practice rounds. Most people waste those moments by reacting on autopilot. They sigh, they snap, they get sarcastic. They don't even realize they're rehearsing bad habits. And then when the big moment comes, they wonder why they lose control. It's because they've been training themselves to lose it without even knowing. You want to be ready when it counts. You have to make a conscious decision to use everyday frustrations as training drills. That's where you start catching yourself. You feel the irritation, the urge to react, and instead you choose to pause. You choose to breathe. You choose to respond in a way you'd be proud to have recorded and played back to the world. That's the discipline. And it's not glamorous work. Nobody's going to cheer for you because you stayed calm when your coffee order was wrong or because you didn't roll your eyes in a meeting. But those moments are where you're building the reflex. You're creating the mental muscle memory so that when the stakes are high, you don't have to think. Control is just who you are. Here's something else you need to understand. Discipline is built in private before it's displayed in public. The way you talk to yourself matters. If you spend your day feeding yourself negativity, complaining about every little thing, hyping up drama in your own mind, you're training your brain to chase emotional volatility. But if you practice reframing, looking at challenges as opportunities to sharpen yourself, you're conditioning yourself to stay steady. Journaling can be one of the most effective tools for this. Not the kind where you just dump emotions on a page and walk away, but the kind where you analyze your reactions. At the end of the day, write down the moments that tested you. Ask yourself, what triggered me? How did I respond? What could I have done differently? You do that consistently and you'll start noticing patterns, and patterns are where discipline starts. Another key part of this daily discipline is deliberately exposing yourself to discomfort. If you always avoid situations that might frustrate you, you're never actually training control. You're just avoiding tests. And the truth is, life won't give you that luxury forever. If you seek out small doses of pressure, you start normalizing it. You build the tolerance. It could be as simple as taking the longer route home, standing in the longer line, or speaking up in a meeting where you know you might get pushback. Every one of those moments is a rep for your control muscle. And here's something that separates the disciplined from the undisciplined. They don't rely on mood. They don't wait to feel like being in control. They've decided that control is the standard, no matter the circumstance. Mood is irrelevant. Situation is irrelevant. They've set the bar and they live by it. Think of it like a professional athlete. They don't only train on days they feel like it. They train because it's part of who they are. They know that consistency is the only way to be ready when it matters most. Emotional control is no different. The people who seem naturally composed aren't magical. They're consistent. You just don't see the hundreds of small moments they've used to sharpen themselves. This is why discipline is so powerful. It doesn't just prepare you for the big challenges. It changes how you see yourself. Every time you control a reaction, you build self-respect. You start to trust yourself more. You know you can be relied on even by you. And when you trust yourself, you don't need as much from other people to feel stable. That's real independence. There's also a ripple effect. When you live with emotional discipline, the people around you start to adjust. They know they can't bait you. They know drama won't get a rise out of you. They know you'll bring steadiness into situations instead of chaos. That's when you stop just being respected, you become relied on. People seek you out because they know you won't lose your head when everyone else is losing theirs. The truth is, mastering emotional control isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about refining who you already are. It's about keeping the best parts of yourself, your passion, your drive, your ambition, and stripping away the parts that sabotage you. And you don't get there by chance. You get there by choosing every single day to practice. So the next time life hands you one of those small, annoying moments, the wrong order, the missed call, the person who talks over you, don't waste it. See it for what it is, a rep, another chance to train the one skill that will serve you in every area of your life. Because one day the stakes will be higher. And when that day comes, you'll either be ready because you've trained or you'll crumble because you haven't. The choice isn't made in the moment of crisis. It's made in the hundreds of moments before it. And if you choose daily discipline, When the world finally tests you, you won't have to get ready. You'll already be ready. In the end, it's simple. The world is going to test you. Not on your best day, but on your worst. Not when you're rested and ready, but when you're tired, distracted, and frustrated. And in that moment, you will reveal the truth about yourself. Not with your words, but with your control. Respect isn't given because of your title, your talent, or your intentions. It's given because people believe you can be trusted when it matters most. And trust is born from control. You can't control the market, the weather, or what other people say and do, but you can control you. And that control is your power. So stop waiting for the big test to decide who you're going to be. Start training now in the traffic jam, in the tough meeting, in the heated conversation. Every small moment is a chance to prove to yourself first and then to everyone else that you are steady, you are sharp, and you are unshakable. Because when you control yourself, you control the room. And when you control the room, you control the outcome. That's the kind of person people respect. That's the kind of person they follow. That's the kind of person who wins. So ask yourself right now, when the world pushes you, will you break or will you stand? The answer isn't in your intentions. It's in your discipline. Build it every day, protect it at all costs. And when the moment comes, and it will, you won't just keep your respect. You'll own it.